At $20,000 a unit, they can afford to lose
against a threat that doesn't play by any of the old. Every hit is a catastrophic financial loss.
You can armor a vehicle against a landmine, but you cannot armor it against an intelligent.
The warning time drops from hours to mere seconds when the enemy launches from your own.
Defense didn't fail because it was weak. It failed because it.
What if the world's most terrifying weapon isn't built in a billion-dollar lab, but forged in the silence of the desert for the price of a single missile?
America spends $500 billion building an impenetrable shield, completely blind to the fact that the rules of modern warfare have been rewritten.
Iran didn't try to match the United States ship for ship.
This is the ultimate asymmetric nightmare. A strategy designed not to win a battle, but to bleed an empire dry, one cheap strike at a time.
It doesn't take a five-star general to deploy them, just a flatbed truck, a set of coordinates, and the cover of a quiet moonless night.
They call it the swarm, an endless wave of disposable hunters that don't sleep, don't miss, and don't cost a fortune, just patience and a quiet night.
At $20,000 a unit, they can afford to lose 100 of these, just to make absolutely sure that a single one gets through. It flies low, hugging the terrain, completely invisible to the multi-million-dollar defense grids that were designed to look for much bigger and much dumber prey. They never attack alone. A true swarm is a synchronized hive mind overwhelming the enemy with pure, relentless, and terrifying volume.
The greatest defense network on Earth was built to stop fighter jets and ballistic missiles, not a cloud of robotic locusts flying low and fast. Panic sets in when a $500 billion military realizes their weapons are practically useless against a threat that doesn't play by any of the old rules. You can't shoot a bullet with a bullet, especially when the sky is bleeding dozens of these things at terminal velocity coming from every direction at once.
This is the deadly mathematics of modern war. A cheap piece of flying plastic and explosives brings down a multi-million.
Every hit is a catastrophic financial loss for the defense, and a massive calculated victory for the swarm multiplying across the battlefield.
Commanders watch in absolute horror as their impenetrable fortress is systematically dismantled by what amounts to remote-controlled model airplanes built on a shoestring budget.
It's a perfect kill, but in the brutal economy of modern warfare, a perfect kill like that means you are going bankrupt, one interceptor at a time.
Retreat isn't an option when the enemy doesn't need to sleep, breathe, or refuel before hunting you down across 100 miles of open desert.
They don't even need to strike the target directly, destroying the infrastructure that strands the most advanced military on Earth right here in the dirt and the dust.
Stranded, exposed, and out of options, the greatest fighting force in the world is pinned down by an invisible operator sitting miles away in a hole in the ground.
They thought the attack was over, but a swarm doesn't just strike once it probes. It analyzes and it returns with overwhelming and undeniable force.
$5 billion didn't just bought an entire mechanized air force that America simply cannot afford.
The defense grid is drained, the interceptors are gone, and the real attack, the one they've been waiting for, hasn't even begun to start.
While American generals sweat in billion-dollar war rooms, the victor of this war is a man with a joystick in a cave drinking cold tea and waiting.
This is the dawn of precision saturation. You can armor a vehicle against a landmine, but you cannot armor it against an intelligent flying bomb that learns as it hunts. There is no heroism here, no grand battle to fight, just the terrifying realization that technology has outpaced raw power by 100 years.
The brain of the Congo will get destroyed.
But high-speed jets are built for dogfights and not for swatting hundreds of tiny slow-moving insects that hide in the smoke and the clutter of the desert floor.
The swarm doesn't need to outrun a fighter jet, it only needs to get sucked into the engine, or force a $100 million machine into a terrified retreat.
A multi-million-dollar machine forced into a terrifying retreat by 20 pounds of plastic and explosives, and a man with nothing to lose sitting in a hole in the ground.
They have weaponized patience waiting out the heavy hitters until the skies belong to them and them alone, and then the real plan begins.
They bypassed the entire United States Navy without firing a single shot, positioning the swarm right at the front door of a sleeping nation. America built walls and radar nets to stop armies completely blind to the Trojan horses sailing right past them in the dead of night.
The warning time drops from hours to mere seconds when the enemy launches from your own backyard, just over the horizon, and closes fast.
The last line of defense is a wall of lead firing thousands of rounds a minute into the dark, hoping that math and velocity will be enough to stop what's coming.
Sacrifice is the strategy. They will gladly trade a dozen cheap drones just to blind the multi-million-dollar eye and punch a hole through the wall.
Once the perimeter is breached, the ultimate soft target is exposed, and all the money
The war was won without a single soldier crossing a border, fundamentally rewriting the blueprint of global power from a hole in the ground with a joystick and a plan. And then just as quickly as it began, the signal went silent, leaving no trace, no command signature, and no one left to blame but the ghost. You thought the drone swarm was the end of the story. But what if this was only phase? Because a swarm doesn't stop.
To understand the scale of the threat,
The $500 billion defense didn't fail because it was weak. It failed because it was built for a world longer exists.
Because a swarm doesn't stop, it doesn't negotiate, and it doesn't rest until every light in every city on every coast of the world has gone dark and silent forever.
to understand the scale of the threat, you must first understand the machine that builds it.
It begins here in the raw, a mountain of carbon fiber and polymer resin, the very bones and sinew of the
Every component of the swarm begins as a simple flat sheet of woven carbon destiny, waiting to be cut-shaped and transformed into something far more deadly.
Angle. Precision is everything. A deviation of a single millimeter changes the aerodynamics and turns a silent hunter into a...
What was once a flat sheet of woven carbon is now a wing ready to slice through the night sky, carrying a payload built. The fuselage is not cut from a sheet. It is born in the heat and pressure of a mold built layer by layer. Under vacuum and heat, the carbon and resin will fuse into a single piece of aerospace-grade armor, light enough to fly far, and strong. While the fuselage cures in the heat, the skeleton is born in the cold, hard precision of 5-axis mills, carving air.
Tolerances here are measured in thousandths of an inch, because in the air at 200 miles an hour, a loose bolt or a warped bracket means the difference between a hit and a miss.
What emerges from the heat and the pressure is no longer fabric and liquid resin. It is a single, unified piece of
Into the empty heart of the machine goes the brain that will guide it, and the fist that will strike.
Before it ever tastes the Opsian sky, the machine must prove itself on the ground.
unremarkable and indistinguishable from 1,000 other shipments, the finished Predator disappears into a plastic cocoon ready to travel the world without raising a single eyebrow.
This is the machine behind the swarm, a beating mechanical heart that never sleeps, never slows, and answers.
The factory has done its work, and now the swarm enters the arteries of global commerce. Anonymous,
Tinctors. Across borders and through checkpoints, the swarm moves like a ghost in the machine of global trade, arriving finally at the edge of nowhere.
From the factory floor to the desert floor, the journey is complete, and the hunter is finally home.
In the dark and the dust, the final pieces come together not on an assembly line, but in the hands of men who know that the machine is only as good the moment of commitment. The sound of a latch closing in the dark is the last sound the world hears before the sky begins to scream.
In the ones and zeros, they're in.
The hunter is no longer waiting, it is moving, drawn by the promise of the open sky and the coordinates burned into its digital memory.
At the edge of the world, on a ridge under a cold moon, the machine is finally where it was always meant to be, alone with the sky.
Alone it is a threat, but together they are an unstoppable force, a single mind with a
In the final seconds, there is no thought, no hesitation, only the cold mathematical certainty of impact and the knowledge that the mission will be complete.
The explosion is not the end. It is merely the punctuation at the end of a sentence written in fire and paid for with a
From the edge of space, the scope of the assault becomes clear. Not a single strike, but a symphony of destruction playing. The machine that builds the swarm does not rest, does not sleep, and does not mourn the ones it has already sent into the fire.
This is not a workshop. It is a city dedicated to a single purpose. A beating heart of industry that pumps it.
And this is just one nest among many. A single hive in a global network of shadow factories, each one dedicated to
There is no end to the swarm, there is only the next wave and the one after that.
Every frame in this video has been transformed through a multi-stage editing process. From GIF conceptualization to VO3 generation, human creativity leads every step. This channel is dedicated to original AI craftsmanship and follows all 2026 YouTube monetization rules.